Thank you for being here, Adam. I really appreciate your time.
Sure.
We're just going to touch on a few topics like the red heifer, etc., and really just to get your view on it and what you know about it to clear up any misunderstandings that are out there on YouTube and the media, etc.
And there are a lot of them.
There's a lot. There is a lot.
There are a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of lies and a lot of, yeah.
That's very true. So as we were discussing just slightly before we conducted this interview, we were saying about the red heifer and how this has now become a center point for focus with Christians as well. And the reason is that we know that there will be a third temple in the end times. And so the red heifer is like for us a step towards that in seeing that. So if we see the red heifer is slaughtered and the ashes are obtained, we know that this is moving forward. We can see it as almost like a prophetic marker in the timeline of where we are.
I think it'll be a huge paradigm shift.
Sure.
Because it'll be the first time we've made a major step towards the third temple. I mean, so much so that I have prayed on the Temple Mount, but we're like, we kind of scuttle up there and hide away, and the Temple Mount is the Muslim place, and which is ridiculous. It should be a house of prayer for all nations, and absolutely. It's a house of prayer for one nation, and that is the opposite of what it should be. It's the antithesis. So we're right now we're very, very far away. This would be the first major step, even if we don't do anything with the ashes, but we just perform the ceremony, and the ceremony is on the Mount of Olives. It's nowhere near the Temple Mount. The land is already bought. And this would be the first major step. I mean, even 1967, we conquered the Temple Mount, but we gave it back, or at least the custodianship. So this will be the first step that Jews will say, no, we know where the focus is. The focus is the Temple Mount. The Arabs know that it should be our focus, but this will be the first step towards that.
And what just is crazy to me is the fact that the site of where the Temple Mount is and where they built the Dome of the Rock, being like not even the holiest place for them, is where the main place of I don't know how you'd put it. Would you put like temple service and temple should be built for the Jews? It's like the most important place for you guys, right?
If anyone ever says the Temple Mount is the holiest site is the third holiest site in Islam, they're lying and they don't know what they're talking about.
Okay, right.
Okay. It has to do, the Umayyads told other Muslims in this region, you can't, it was, I think, 50 or 70 years after Muhammad died, you can't go on Hajj to Mecca, which is very, very important to them.
Okay.
And so they made up a story about, there's a hadith in the Quran about Muhammad making a miraculous overnight journey to Al-Aqsa Mosque, the farther mosque. Now, until the Umayyads, the further mosque there was a town, Al-Juhana, near Mecca, that had two mosques. One was in the town and the other was far outside of the town. And that was the Aqsa Mosque. Saudis still today know that the Aqsa Mosque is in Al-Juhana and not in Jerusalem. So because the Umayyads said you can't make Hajj, they looked at this story of Muhammad going to the further mosque, and they said the further mosque is in Jerusalem, which they call Al-Quds. Al-Quds means the holy place, but it was holy for us, not for them. So they started, because they were not allowed by the Umayyads to make Hajj, they started making Hajj to Jerusalem based on this made-up story. Okay. And as soon as the Umayyads said, we're not angry at you anymore, they started going on Hajj to Mecca. So the Palestinians have no attachment to this land, so they resurrected this story, okay, of Al-Aqsa. And what's funny is anyone who says Al-Aqsa, the third holiest site in Islam, and they show a picture of the gold dome is not Al-Aqsa. Al-Aqsa is the black dome. Okay, and
Right.
why is the black dome? Because the black dome is on the southern end, so that when they pray, they put their rear ends towards
Sure.
our temple, because the first Muslims, they made the what do you call it? Qibla. The direction they prayed in used to be Jerusalem, but then there were too many Jewish converts who were like undercover Jews, so they said, "Oh, no, 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 no. The Qibla is now towards Mecca." So they have to pray towards Mecca and put their rear ends towards Jerusalem. So it's not the third holiest site in all of Islam. It's got this kind of story that was made up, and every Muslim outside of Palestinians know it was made up, but the Palestinians have made a big deal out of it, so much so that I was told that the soldiers who went into Gaza, they said every single house has a picture of the gold dome.
Okay.
And they called the attack on Israel the Al-Aqsa wave.
Right.
But they show a picture of, I think it's called Kuba Suk Sakra, which is the Dome of the Rock. Oops,
okay.
I raised my hand.
Yeah, that happens there, right?
Yeah, so it's not, but they've made it into their central thing. So a lot of the soldiers now have a patch with a picture of the temple, because they said they know what they know what they're fighting for, and so do we.
Obviously, like with that established, like from my understanding, the point on the Temple Mount where now again you might have to correct me, is it where Abraham's altar is located?
The Dome of the Rock.
Isn't it the blue dome just in front of it?
We call it the Even Shtiyah,
right?
The foundation stone. According to the Midrashim, according to the Midrashic literature, that's where God began to create the world. I mean, this is Midrash, and all of the sustenance that comes into the world from Hashem, from God, comes down through there and then spreads out into the world. It's also supposed to be where, where Abraham bound Isaac and did not sacrifice him. But more importantly, when we came out of Egypt, God commanded us to make the tabernacle. And the tabernacle was a tent and traveled around. And Jerusalem was just another city. Of course, Melchizedek, before Abraham, was a priest. And so I've actually seen in Jerusalem Melchizedek's altar. It's crazy. That's a different story. Yeah, so the tabernacle was in Shiloh for 369 years after the Jews came into Israel.
Yeah.
And then the Philistines who captured the ark, took it down to Ashkelon. Okay, and when we got it back, it did not go back to Shiloh. It traveled around to a couple different places. Yeah. And then when King David was establishing his kingdom, he bought the threshing floor on the top of the mount of on top of the Temple Mount, and he said, "Okay, this is where we're going to do and he made a sacrifice there, and from that moment on, it was forbidden for the Jews to make a sacrifice anywhere else. It was very unusual in that they took the tabernacle, which was portable, and they established a place for it. And there were a few other changes made. So the red heifer, in the Torah, we're commanded to burn the red heifer outside of the camp. Sure. So the red heifer, it's kind of a sacrifice, but not really, because it's outside of the camp, not in the tabernacle. Yeah. So the times of the temple, the red heifer ceremony was performed, and it was burned on the Mount of Olives. There was a specific place, and there was actually a stone bridge built out to that place from the temple. Yeah. According to the Talmud, you had to be able to see from that spot into the Holy of Holies. Yeah. If there was no wall, if there was no curtain, depending on which temple we're talking about, but there was one specific spot. Keeping in mind that from the time of Moses until the destruction of the temple, there were only 9 red heifers. It's incredibly rare. 9 red heifers since the time of Moses and Mount Sinai. That's it. And we haven't done it in 2,000 years. Wow. So Yeah.
So obviously we know that the location is on the temple. Sorry, the Mount of Olives.
Yes. Yes.
I did a little looking into this and actually did a video on where it potentially could be.
Right.
And from what I could see, the Temple Institute was saying was that it would be in the courtyard or around there of the Dominus Flevit Church. Is that correct or is that incorrect?
I've heard that also. To be honest, that's the aspect of the red heifer that I've investigated. At least a lot of the stuff is really under wraps. Last
Yeah,
week, I mean, one of the major obstacles was finding a Cohen,
right. I've
finding
seen
a
the
priest
news.
who
Yeah,
was it was, and I was led to believe that was a huge obstacle. All of a sudden, boom! Wednesday afternoon, they announced that they found at least one kid, and maybe even 9 people are going to start being trained. So a
wow.
lot of this is under wraps. There are going to be a lot of surprises. I would love to be able to do a video and say I was wrong. You know,
Sure.
I would never. It would make me the happiest I've ever been in my life to be wrong about when this is going to be. If they come up to me and say, "Well, you
Sure.
did it yesterday and you weren't there," I'd be like, "Thank God." You
I
know,
mean,
so one of the aspects
yeah,
that's been under wraps is the spot.
sure,
And they've been the conference that they held in Shiloh, they've been looking for the actual red heifer for at least a dozen years. But the red heifer, getting the cow, is not the only obstacle that has to be
sure.
overcome. And since we only do it once every 1,000 or 2,000 years, it has to be perfect in every
Yeah.
detail, where there's
Hmm.
no fudging it. There's no close enough. It has to be perfect. And there are a lot of problems, and there are a lot of things we didn't know that have to be investigated. There are a lot of modern problems. Um, and one of them is, well, they always knew where the site was. There was a bridge. We don't. So we have to
Sure,
figure that
sure.
out.
Hmm.
But there has been a plot of land on the Mount of Olives that was purchased a while ago
Yes.
by Tzachi Mamo. Tzachi Mamo, he was very involved in an organization called Ateret Kohanim, which was involved in buying properties that used to belong to Jews that we
Right.
had the deeds for, but the Arabs wouldn't let us have. Mostly in the Arab town of Silwan, which until the 1900s or 19 was a Yemenite city,
Right.
and the Arabs were attacking the Jews and killing them, and the British said, "Just leave for a week or two, and we'll take care of the problem. Then you can come back." So the Jews left, and the British said, "Well, you're not coming back." But we have the
Right.
deeds for all those properties. And
Hmm.
Sachimamo was he was very good at purchasing these properties, even though we owned them. And most of the effort had to be made in hiding the identity of the Arab seller because it's capital
Sure.
punishment in the Palestinian Authority. They murder Arabs who sell land to Jews.
Wow.
So he had that experience in purchasing those
Hmm.
properties. So it was that experience that helped him purchase the Mount of. It's not easy for Jews to buy land in Israel.
Really?
Um, yeah, really,
Wow.
really. Um, I mean, otherwise we'd be everywhere.
Sure.
And you can buy the land, and the Israeli government will kick you off. That's what happened in Gaza. Not so long ago, Jews were living there, and Jews owned the land.
Yeah. Hmm.
So he purchased the land on the Mount of Olives, but we're still working out. There was a discussion: is this the right place? Even though we'd already purchased it. So there's a lot of things that we're still working out. The exact location is one of them. But yeah, that courtyard of that church that you mentioned, we believe that's the place, and there's a pit with ashes in it, and there's a lot of reasons to
Sure.
believe that was the spot.
Wow.
So
Okay. That leads me on to like the next question I have, which is basically regarding the Cohen, the priest. Now, obviously, the bridge was in place. That would be the Red Heifer Bridge, and
right.
it had the arches
I
so
believe they
that
also I believe they also used it on Yom Kippur to take the
okay,
goat out to the
sure, right. The is that the scapegoat, which
yeah,
would then be yeah.
exactly.
So how like in a modern perspective, how would they get the priest to the location of the heifer?
Well, in theory, okay. One of the main considerations is ritual impurity that's imparted by proximity to a dead person.
Sure.
So and that's exactly what the red heifer comes to solve.
Sure.
This is the first time ever, going back to Moses, that we've had to perform this ceremony without actually having the ashes of the previous red heifer.
Sure. Yeah.
So the Cohen could be purified by the ashes of the previous red heifer. We don't have that. So that's one of the difficulties. To find the Cohen, they had to find a Cohen who had never been in a hospital, because dead people are there and they'll become impure. Born at home, never been in a hospital. And Kohanim, we have very strict traditions of who the Kohanim are. You go to an Israeli town, you say, who are the Kohanim? Anyone who goes to synagogue and say him, 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 and him.
Right.
Okay. We know precisely who the Kohanim are, who the men who have a tradition in their family through their fathers, that they are descended from Aaron the priest. No one fakes it. On your gravestone, they will engrave this, so that they know that the person who's buried there was a Kohen, so his children were Kohen. I know guys who didn't know that were not religious, and then they go to visit their father's gravesite, and they're like, "Whoa, what's that?" I'm like, "Oh, you're a Kohen." And there are certain specific honors and recognitions that are given to them every single day, so we know who they are. We know who their sons are. That's not the problem. The problem is finding one who has, and there are certain prohibitions. They're not allowed to enter cemeteries for the reason of ritual impurity. They're also not allowed to marry converts, divorcees, or non-Jews. And if they do, their sons are no longer Kohanim. It's very, very strict.
Yeah.
So they had to find a young man who'd been born at home and never been in a cemetery. And that was pretty difficult. It had to be at least 15 years old, because we're talking about slaughtering a full-grown cow, taking a big, long knife. That's
strong animal.
Yeah, it's physically pretty intimidating. And also, it's, I don't know if you've ever slaughtered an animal. It's pretty, it's pretty intense. So, and it takes a lot of training. So they're going to be training the Kohanim who are kosher. I was told that there are 9. Last Wednesday, the Temple Institute, and they are the absolute address. Anyone who does not speak to the Temple Institute, Rav Azaria Ariel, Rabbi Mordechai Persov, Rav Menachem Makover, if you're not talking to those people, and you don't know what you're talking about, you're making stuff up.
Sure.
So they announced last Wednesday that they had found one kosher Kohen. They didn't just find him; they announced it. I mean, they've been working on this, like I said, for 12 years. The red heifer is a big part of it, but it's not the only part of it.
No, I actually saw your video. Actually, one of the more recent ones you did. And you were talking with I forgot his name now, but there was
Josh Wander, the guy with the thing on his head.
Josh Wander, right? Correct. Yes. And he was talking about the level of secrecy, and obviously that makes sense with Hamas, Hezbollah, etc.
Oh, Josh keeps secrets from me. Josh,
sure. You got to keep it secret, right? So
Josh actually, he lives on the Mount of Olives, so he is surrounded by Arabs. His house, his apartment building, heavy security.
Sure.
You go out to he lives, I don't know, 3rd or 4th floor. And you go up to his house, you go out on the balcony, and you're looking right down at the Dome of the Rock, which is like 200 yards away. It's insane. And every time there's some kind of event or something having to do with the temple, he's there. So I'm 1 foot on the inside. He is firmly on the inside. Josh is amazing.
I mean, I've been subscribed to his channel for a little while.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I've seen some of his videos. He's got videos of certain things happening, the practicing, like the certain stuff
The way I
that
met
needs to
Josh
happen
was
for the
I was
temple.
writing about these stories like 7 years
Yeah.
ago, and I kept seeing the same guy over and over again. I live in the
Right.
Golan,
Yeah.
so for me to go to I live in the Golan. For me to go to Jerusalem is a heavy trip. It's like 3-4 hours by bus.
Okay.
But Josh is like he gets out of
Right
his
there.
house and walks there.
Wow.
So he's really on the inside. He really is.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing I obviously is obvious to me, or maybe it's speculation, is that if things are kept under wrap, this we could be a lot further along than we know from
Oh
what's
yeah.
been released. So could it be possible that, and I don't want to, I'm only asking these questions because let's just get everything out there and get everything that
Yeah.
needs to be known, that the Cohen is already being trained. I mean, if
I
they
don't
knew
think
of it
so.
previously, you
I
don't
don't
think
think
so?
so. I don't
Do
think
you think
so.
it would take long for him to be
Yeah.
trained up?
I I could be wrong, of course, and I would be happy.
Sure,
It's not going to happen before Passover. And
sure.
it's certainly not going to happen on Passover. A
Okay.
lot of the people who were saying it's going to happen, this week, what
Yeah.
they were talking about is what they call the Shabbat of Parah,
Yes. Okay.
cow Shabbos. It happens every year at
Sure,
this
sure.
time, a week or two before Passover. Why? Because you need the red heifer in order to bring the Passover offering. And the Passover offering is the most important offering of the year. You take it to the temple, and then they slaughter it there, and then you take it home, and everyone's required to eat at least a mouthful of it.
Okay.
And we read that every single year before Passover in order to do like a review of the laws of ritual purity, because you need to be ritually pure to bring that sacrifice. So these were people, I don't need, to say that, oh, they're going to bring the sacrifice because of Shabbat Parah. I mean, do they even know any Jews?
Sure.
Where did they pull that one out from? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I mean, it
There's a
might happen
lot.
next week, but it certainly didn't happen on the week of Shabbat
Sure.
Parah. Yeah, there was even, and also there's another lie that's been flying around, and it was
Yeah.
said in CBS News, which was they said an altar has already been built,
Right.
and they had a picture of a big white altar. First of all, the red heifer is not burned on an altar. Not only does
Sure.
it not need an altar, it's forbidden for it to be burned on an altar,
Okay.
because it gets burned on a big pile of wood, and then you collect the ashes. And it's forbidden for us to build an altar anywhere except on the Temple Mount, where it was in the
Right.
times of the temple. And the red heifer is not burned on the Temple Mount, so there wouldn't be an altar on the Mount of Olives. The white altar that they showed a picture of was actually, it's in a city called Mitzpah Yericho, nowhere near Jerusalem. Well, I mean, it's outside of Jerusalem on the way to the Dead Sea. Okay, it's in between Jerusalem and Jericho.
Yeah.
And it was a model altar built for demonstration purposes. Okay,
Sure.
it's not a kosher altar. It's made out of wood and metal and stuff. And the real altar, of course, is uncut stones.
Right.
So this was a lot of these people also showed the Golden Dome, said Al-Aqsa Mosque, and then they showed this altar, the altar for the red heifer. And I'm like, please tell me you got one thing right in the article.
Yeah.
So it's not an altar. The altar wasn't built because we don't need it. These are more the lies that are being told.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow.
And I want to emphasize, if I can take this opportunity to
Absolutely.
emphasize it,
Yeah.
those articles, and it's really scary. There are people claiming to be Christians, and I question their belief. Which is not really my place to do, but they're saying, that they tend to go. There's even a guy, he said, it's evil, and I'm thinking it's a biblical commandment. It's written in the Bible. Are you calling the Bible evil? What's the deal? You can't say it's evil. You can say, oh, there's the temple of the Antichrist. Fine. But this is a biblical commandment.
Yeah.
This
This is what I try to explain as well. Because when I do videos on the red heifer, or the temple, etc., there will be a certain group of Christians which will say, we no longer need the heifer. We got Jesus Christ. He was our red heifer, and I get that. But what they don't understand, or what they're not seeing, is that the Jews don't count Jesus as their Messiah. So obviously, you're going to want to resume with what the Old Testament, as we refer to it.
Also, a lot of Christians will say we don't need the red heifer because Jesus cleans us from our sins. The red heifer is not
right.
cleaning people from their sins.
No,
It's
no.
cleaning from ritual impurity from contact with a dead person.
Right. Yeah.
And the Jewish perspective is this, and it's always been this. We are slaves of God. God tells us what to do. We got no choice. We got to do it. When we were given the Torah, there's an expression we call na'aseh v'nishma, which means we'll do it and then we'll ask questions. Not ask questions of God, but we'll study it some more.
Okay.
Meaning the mitzvot, the commandments are experiential, and it's not whether you agree or disagree or even understand. You just do it.
Right.
So for us, the red heifer is just another commandment that's written in the Bible, and we're required to do all of them. So we got to do it.
Gotcha.
We didn't choose to do it. And if we do it and we can't bring the sacrifices on the Temple Mount, okay, but we did it. At least we did what God told us to do. You know, I don't understand why I keep kosher, but God told me not to eat pork, so I don't eat pork.
Right.
God
Exactly.
told me to keep Shabbat. I keep Shabbat. I don't ask questions. You know.
I mean, if that's obviously if that's what you follow, if that's your belief, then
Right.
you wouldn't, right? I mean, because you believe wholeheartedly that this was given by God, and so we would follow that to the T.
Right. And it's
And
commandments
that just makes sense.
commandments to the Jewish nation. We stood at Mount Sinai. We said we're going to do it. Okay. I'm not going to walk up to a Christian and say, you have to do the red heifer. You have to eat kosher. You have to keep. No, you weren't there. If you want to do it, fantastic. You know, Shabbat's fantastic. I know a lot of Christians who do what they call eating biblically. I know a lot of Christians who have moved their Sabbath to Shabbat to Saturday. If they do, fantastic. If they don't, fine. They weren't commanded. I was commanded, so I have to do it.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, that makes sense. And it's so in regards to, like, obviously, we talked a bit about the red heifer. And you mentioned about, our viewpoint as Christians on what's going to happen when the temple's put up, etc. Do you think that there is going to be a temple that needs to be put up, or would it be?
Well, where is it? I think it's in Haggai, where he says, "You dwell in tiled houses, and God is homeless."
Yes.
When they came back from when we came back from Babylonia, we didn't build the temples right away.
Yeah.
Even though Cyrus told us to. It wasn't until Nehemiah and who's the other guy? Ezra and Nehemiah that we built the temples. Okay. But what they did do was they started the temple service immediately. We don't need a temple to do the temple service. What we need an altar in the place where the altar stood in the temple times. An altar is a pile of stones. So we can take a group of young, strong boys, give them each a big rock, and say, "Go on up. We'll meet you up there." They set up the pile of rocks. We do a sacrifice. Clean it up afterwards. Bring out some hoses, clean off all the blood and ashes, and then take the rocks away.
It literally could be set up like quick
in 10 minutes.
10 minutes, yeah.
Everything is ready. The utensils are ready. The clothes for the Kohanim are ready. The Kohanim are ready. We've been training Kohanim for the regular service. It would take literally 3 or 4 hours to restart the temple service. Everything is ready.
Wow. I've seen actually, all the instruments and all this type of stuff that's ready for the temple. It's quite amazing. Just trying to get my bearings on some of the questions I was going to ask you. With the ceremony, do you need government approval for that?
All right. It's not on the Temple Mount. Okay.
Sure.
According to Israeli law, Israeli law mandates equality and freedom of religion.
Okay.
It is against Israeli law to prevent Jews or Christians from praying on the Temple Mount. Christians are also not allowed to pray on the Temple Mount. If you
Okay.
go up to the Temple Mount, you have to hide your cross.
Right.
And there's actually the Waqif. I don't know why they do it, but sometimes they'll make Christians wear these really ugly, like they'll give them like sweatpants and sweat skirts,
Right. Okay.
sweatshirts that have big wide yellow stripes on them, to embarrass them and
Right.
make them wear it on the Temple Mount. But it's against Israeli law to be biased, prejudiced, to prevent someone from having religious freedom. But they do it anyway because they say, oh, the Arabs will get angry. And I'm like, so is it legal for them to throw rocks at me? I mean, what's, what? But so it's kind of like a weird situation. But it's funny, we're coming up on Passover, and if you, there are 2 mitzvahs in the Torah that if you don't do them, they're positive commandments that you're required to do, that if you don't do them, you get a punishment called karet. Karet means cutting. You get cut off from the Jewish people spiritually.
Okay. Okay. Right.
One of them is the Passover offering. The other is circumcision.
Okay.
But so it's very, very important for us to do the Passover offering. Every year there are attempts by people to take a sheep or a goat up to the Temple Mount to do it.
Yeah.
And every year the Temple Institute petitions the government to do it.
Okay.
The reason why they do that is just to say, look, the government is stopping me, but I'm not going to go down quietly. Because if I go down quietly, it's like saying, okay, I'm not going to do God's commandment.
Right.
At least this way we can say we tried and the government stopped us. So the big problem, the big obstacle is the Israeli government. And it's if you, I gotta tell you, man, when I go up to Temple, they actually had to take the Israeli police to court for me to be able to drink from the water fountain.
Wow.
On the Temple Mount. And for an American, that reminds us of the civil rights movement when the blacks could not use.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and we still are not allowed to use the bathrooms. We're still not allowed to use the bathrooms up there. Now we can finally use the water fountains. I do pray up there, but we're only allowed to pray like off to the side.
Yeah.
And we're not allowed to wear a tefillin. We're not allowed to wear a talis. We can't read from a Torah scroll. We're incredibly limited, and we're not allowed up there at night, so we can't pray our evening prayers. We're not allowed up on Friday or Saturday, so we can't pray our Sabbath prayers. So we're like, for now, I can't go up there now because it's the end of Ramadan. So Jews are incredibly limited up there, and that's us doing it to ourselves. And what's horrible is because we do that, the Palestinians are like, well, Palestinians are made up term. I hate it. The Arabs are like, oh, we are telling you what to do. And I'm like, why? Why? We won the war. We won the war. And what? It's supposed to be a house of prayer for all nations. And the people who are saying, oh, the Jews, it's like, so you support, it is apartheid, that Jews are third-class citizens, not only on the Temple Mount. I'm not allowed to set foot in a lot of areas in Israel, in Judea and Samaria. I'm not allowed to set foot in it. That's apartheid. Arab Israelis can go anywhere they want. They're totally equal. So there is apartheid, but it's anti-Jewish. And one of the places where the apartheid is the strongest is on the Temple Mount. So we can't bring back the temple as long as there's anti-Jewish apartheid in Israel.
Yeah, it's insane. It really is. I guess one last thing I sort of want to just ask you, because I know it's getting late, and I appreciate that Israel's two hours ahead of myself in the UK.
Well, it's either this or wash the Shabbos dishes. So
how many dishes are there? Is there a lot? Yeah,
three meals. So
okay, yeah, all right, we can carry on then. They say, now this is just what I read online, so it may not be correct. They say that the 10th red heifer would be slaughtered by whom they would, the Jews would see as the Messiah, Mashiach. Is that correct? like in
That's kind of
understanding?
correct. There is a Jewish tradition. It's also mentioned by the Rambam, by Maimonides, that, as I said, between the time of Moses until the destruction of the temple, there were 9 red heifers
Yeah.
prepared. The last one lasted for 400 years after the
Right.
temple was destroyed.
Hmm.
So they were still doing the red heifer purification for
Yeah.
400 years. And the Rambam does say, not really that the Messiah will do it, but that the 10th red heifer will be in order to purify the nation for to receive the Messiah and to do the temple
Right.
service for the third temple.
Hmm.
And there was an experiment done where they actually burned a cow, not a red heifer,
Right. Yeah.
according to all the halachas, and they figured out how many sprinklings you could get from one cow, and
Yeah.
it was billions. There's enough,
Wow.
because what you basically do is you burn the cow with an awful lot of wood,
Yeah.
and then you take the tiniest speck of ash and put it into a big barrel of water. Then you take
Yeah.
hyssop, or I think we call it zatar in Hebrew.
Okay.
Like it's a wild thyme, and you sprinkle it. And if a drop hits a person, they become pure. And so
Right.
there's enough for billions and billions of purifications.
Hmm.
And there are
Hmm.
only what, 10, 12 million Jews. So
Right.
it's certainly enough.
It's
And
been a
Christians
lot.
don't need it. Christians do not become ritually
Sure.
impure.
Yeah. Hmm.
Of course, they also can't go up into the temple, but they don't become ritually impure.
Yeah.
So there's certainly enough to purify our generation,
Right.
and a couple generations after.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
but
it's,
that there is that tradition that it will prepare us to greet the Messiah.
sure. So it's not that the Messiah would do it; it's that you'd have a Kohen, a priest do it, but then it would it's
Exactly. I
almost a
mean, because the
marker.
Messiah is not
Yeah.
going to be a Cohen. The
Sure.
Messiah
Sure.
cannot be a Kohen or a priest, because the Kohen or the priest, they're from the tribe of Levi,
Right. Yeah.
and the Messiah will be from the tribe of Judah,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
or
Okay. So that
was from
makes
the
total
tribe of, or
sense. Yeah.
was from the tribe of Judah, depending on.
Yeah.
Christians would
And
say he was from the tribe of Judah. I would say, well, he will be from the tribe of Judah.
right. Absolutely. Yeah. I get that. We,
So there's a
he was.
little
So
difference of opinion there, but he's certainly
yeah.
not going to be from the tribe of Levi. Levi
No.
had
Sure.
nothing to
Sure.
do with it.
Yeah.
Melchizedek was
Uh,
not from the tribe of Levi either. So
do you think that and this is just throwing out a question to you. Do you think
sure,
that the person that would be Messiah is here now? And maybe not known, but do you think that he is here now, or
there's actually a tradition in Judaism that there's a Messiah born every generation.
okay.
We
Right.
have, and the question is, do we merit to see him? We have a tradition that there's 2 ways the Messiah can come.
Okay.
Um, in Hebrew, it's be'ito or achishena. Be'ito means in its time. We're in the year 57. I forget what year we're in. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit fuzzy, but we have a tradition that every 1,000 years relates to one day of creation.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And the seventh day from the year 6,000
Hmm.
onward,
Yeah.
it's like you have 6 days and then you have Shabbat, you have the Sabbath.
Okay.
So the Shabbat is the time of the Mashiach. So for us, there's an end date for when the Mashiach can possibly come. The
Sure.
Mashiach has to come by the year 6,000.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. But even in halacha, Shabbat starts at sundown. But if you want to, you can bring in Shabbos a couple hours early.
Yeah.
So correspondingly, we can bring in Shabbat. We can bring the Mashiach early.
Right.
But that would be done through our merits, the merits of doing the mitzvot, doing the commandments. Which also has to do with Gog and Magog and all that. We're like, yeah, that's what the
Right.
prophet said.
Hmm.
But as we learned from Abraham arguing with God about Sodom and Amorah, we can talk.
Sure. Sure. No, I get that. Yeah. So
So
you by the
if
year
we have
six
enough
thousand.
merit, the Messiah will come
Mm.
early,
Early.
and
Right.
it won't be through horrible trials and tribulations. It'll be a
Okay.
loving process if we
Yeah.
merit. if we merit it.
Okay.
Every generation has a Messiah, and if we merit it, then he will be revealed.
Yeah, sure.
So
It's pretty amazing times then that we live in.
I mean, dude, like I said, I've been writing about this for 7 years. When I first started writing about it, people were making fun of me. And they're
Right.
like, well, this always happens. There's always been an eclipse. There's always been a this. There's always been a that. You're just,
Yeah.
making things up. And I'm like, no. And then in 2017, there was an eclipse in the United States.
Right.
Okay. And everyone was like, oh, there's always eclipses. Why are we making a big deal out of the eclipse? Well, what happened after the eclipse? The eclipse passed out over Florida, passed over a bunch of developing hurricanes. America had one of its most destructive hurricane seasons in 2017.
Right.
And then right after the eclipse, well, there was COVID. Then there was the Ukraine war. Now we're in a war in Israel. I mean, if you start listing all the horrible things and crazy things and powerful things that have happened since 2017, it was only 5 years ago. No one's laughing anymore. No one's questioning. And there's another eclipse, what, on Monday?
Coming right up. Yeah, 2
Yeah.
days, I
So,
think. Yeah. Do you
and you
think
know something? I found out it's crazy. But the last eclipse, people went out and they looked at it.
yeah,
Nice. This eclipse, a lot of the cities that are on the are declaring states of emergency already because they're
really?
expecting
Wow.
so many people to go look at it.
Yeah,
I think people got the fear of God in them. They realized,
sure. Yeah.
hey, when Yoel was talking about the sun getting darkened, he wasn't talking, metaphorically.
Right. No, I get it. I mean, since going back, like you said, since the world's changed and
Yes.
people, it's just gone crazy. I mean, it
Yep.
doesn't make any sense anymore.
People know what's happening and they're going in two different directions.
Yeah.
Some people are like in total denial and they are siding with the darkness, with the enemy.
Yeah.
And some people are like, whoa, it's really I have a rabbi, he says it's a huge game of musical chairs. You play the game musical chairs?
Yeah, I'm familiar.
When the music stops, are you going to get caught standing up without a chair? And
Right.
that's another reason why there's so much polarization going on today. Because what it is when the music stops playing, you're going to have people say, oh, no, I really meant to be over there. It comes from God hardening Pharaoh's heart, which seems like it took away his free will. But what it was Pharaoh was like, with all these plagues, he could have said, I really want to keep the Jews, but I have no choice because of the plagues, I'll send them away. So God said, what do you really want? Show me what your heart really is. So Pharaoh was like, okay, I really want to keep the Jews, and that's what I'm going to do no matter what. So what we're seeing now is, after the music stops, someone's like, oh, no. I really was on God's side. Really?
Right.
So you didn't go out, you didn't post on your Facebook about, being pro-trans and, pronouns.
Right.
And you didn't post on your Facebook about, abortion is a human right. You didn't post about that. You didn't post those horrible things about the Jewish people. You didn't post those horrible things about God. There's not going to be any denying it. It's going to be so polarized. It used to be, well, I kind of believe in, a woman has the freedom of choice. No, it's not like that anymore. It's not like that anymore. It's so polarized that no one can hide. It's like, this is, you came out and said it in public, and you said it in
It's
a
clear
way.
They call good evil and evil good. That's exactly what we see, and it's just
exactly what we're seeing.
It's so obvious, like you say. You know which side people are on.
Exactly.
You can spot them.
Which is why I'm less like, you're Christian, I'm Jewish. I know a lot of really sweet Christian people who they have a deep faith in God. They're not calling Jews evil. They're not calling the Bible evil. They're not saying, oh, you have to understand, Hamas in context. Are you kidding? there are a lot of very sweet Christian people, which is like, 150 years ago, or, in the time of the Holocaust, there were not so many Christians standing up for Jews. It's a huge development, spiritual development in the world.
Yeah, it's moved along.
The Christians will stand with Jews. Christians will stand with Torah. Christians will stand with Israel. I mean, not even the modern state Israel, but Israel.
Israel, yeah.
They would,
No,
they're supporting the Temple of Solomon. So it's
I was talking to a friend yesterday, actually, and it's just that divide, even in Christianity, of whom supports Israel and whom doesn't, is just unbelievable. I was having dinner the other day in a restaurant, and I was with some Christian friends. And basically they were defending Hamas, Palestine.
Right.
I'm just like, I don't understand this. First off, Hamas attacked Israel
in the most horrible way.
Terrible. I woke up that morning on my birthday, October 7th, and I was just like, wow, that's a birthday I'm never gonna forget, because to me that was horrific. What happened to
and even still, they're
Israeli
shooting. I live in a very nice little suburban town called Katsrin in the north, in the Golan. We've been very blessed. We're pretty well protected. But there's one day in the afternoon, all of a sudden, you start hearing bombs all around our city. They're not looking to conquer land. They're not looking to beat the IDF. They just want to kill Jews.
Yeah.
The IDF is going in trying to kill Hamas, and Hamas is trying to kill Jews. That's not equal.
It's not. Do you think that the solar eclipse is judgment on America?
Well, the Talmud says that a lunar eclipse is a bad sign for Israel.
Right.
Because we count our months by the moon. Okay. The solar eclipse is a bad sign for the nations because they count their months by the sun.
Okay, yeah.
You have a solar calendar.
Okay, yeah.
We have a lunar calendar that's fixed, by a cycle. It has so much good in it, and has been a power of good in the world. And everyone's Judeo-Christian. No, it's Christian. It was not too much Judeo
right.
I mean, it was based in the Bible, but it wasn't not so much Judeo, mostly Christian. And they did a lot of good. And I've seen a shift in the Christians. There are a lot of Christians in America who have beautiful support for Israel. Up until October 7th, I could say that the Christians, the devout evangelical Christians, were very loyal partners with Israel, supporters of Israel, even more so than the American Jews and a lot of liberal American secular Jews. The secular American Jews have shifted, and a lot of them got really scared on October 8th. They were like, wow, these are. So I would hate to say that there's a judgment on America. I think they're absolutely, it is, after 2017, wow, there were certainly things happening. So I've written about this actually quite a bit less than I did in 2017, but I think that a lot of people look at this and think something serious is happening. I just would not want to wish judgments on America. I care so much for America. I care so much for the people in America. I care for the evangelicals in America.
Sure.
So I would hate to say that it's a bad sign for them. God forbid.
Yeah. Now I know you've got a website,
Israel365news.com.
News.com. Yeah. So obviously people can go there and keep up to date on things.
I've started a YouTube channel just because I can't keep quiet anymore. If I could shut down my new YouTube channel, I'd be happy, because I hate seeing myself on video. My children are beautiful. I'm not. The YouTube channel is called Wrestling the Angel. I have a Facebook page, wrestlingtheangel.com. People are encouraged to reach out. I also have 3 books that are novels that are simple reading on Amazon. One is called The Hope Merchant. Another is called Dolphins on the Moon. And I have a book called The Master of Return and the 11th Light. And it's actually pretty much a first-hand account of what it's like to live in Judea, in Israel, to try to serve God in the most honest and intentional way possible, to learn from people who are doing that, and then also connecting with very holy people, and then watching them get murdered because they're Jews in Israel. So it's a first-hand account, pretty honest. It's on Amazon.
Right. What I'll do is I'll put the links in the description so people can just click away. Thank you, though, for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm going to let you go because it's late there in Israel.
Really a pleasure.
But God bless you, and we'll speak again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tom.
No, you're welcome. Thank you so much.